Hi guys, in this tutorial we're looking at the switch statement. The switch statement is an alternative to multiple if statements, and it can be more efficient than multiple if statements. It's a little bit difficult to describe how it works, but I think if we look at some examples that will clear things up a lot. So here I have a switch statement and it's set up like this. It has the word switch here, then some parameter that you're looking to match or evaluate, and underneath that we have case, and then what is the expression we want to match, and this colon, then a statement, and we have other cases they have other values here, and then if none of these match, we'll do the default. We'll run this default. So it's kind of like the else in the if-else thing. We have the default in a switch statement. So let's see what happened here. Okay, so basically we have a match here. These evaluated to the same thing, false and false. So what happens was we first wrote this out, and then because we didn't put a break at the end of our case here, what will happen in switch statements is it will execute this, and then it will execute all of the other cases that are under it, no matter what they are. So you can see we have false is equal to false, false is the same as 0, okay, false is not the same as 5, it's definitely not the same as true, but you can see all of these things were executed. So the first one that matches, it will do it, and it will also do everything under it, including the default one. And that's usually not what you're going to want in your applications. Let's look at another example. Here we have another switch statement with an expression here, 3. Well, it's just a number, but I guess it could be an expression too, because it's evaluating to the number 3. And then we have case 2 minus 1, that's going to evaluate to 1. And then we have case 4 minus 1 is going to evaluate to 3, which is the same. Okay, and then we have another 2 minus 1, and then we have a default. And let's see what happens here. So what you can see is there was no match here. It didn't execute this one. It found a match here, 4 minus 1 and 3. It executed this. Then, because we have no break under these, it executed this, which was the same as that, and it executed the default. Okay, so now we can see why we want to use the break keyword in our switch statements. Alright, another example. Okay, switch with 3 again. This time we have a break at the bottom of each of them. 3 is the expression we have here. Then we have 4 minus 1, which is going to equal 3. We have a 3, and we have 2 plus 1, which is also 3. Let's see what happened here. And we can see that it skipped over this, and it executed this, because they evaluated to the same thing. And then, because we have this break here, it jumped out of the switch statement. It went all the way down to here, and jumped out of it and continued with the rest of the code. So when you're making your switch statements, 99% of the time they will probably look just like this. Okay, let's keep going. Alright, so here I've created a whole bunch of variables of all different kinds of stuff. We have a number, we have a string, we have an array. This is an empty array, but it's still an array. We have a boolean. We have a date object, which we haven't looked at, but it doesn't matter. We have a regular expression object. We also haven't looked at those. That doesn't matter either. This is just for examples purposes. We have an object. We haven't looked much at that either. And we have an undefined variable. We looked at this before. I created a variable before called cat, and it wasn't set to anything. So we know that this is going to be, its value is going to be undefined. We have f, which is set to a function, and we have this nu, which is set to null. Okay, so we have all different kinds of data types here. Okay, now let's do something with them. So what I'm doing here is I'm just writing them all out along with their type. And let's take a look at that. Okay, so we can see all our stuff here. One interesting thing though is even though these guys are all different in their own way, we got a lot of objects returned. The data type of array was object. The date, this was also an object. If you go like this, if you just go now or whatever variable is set to new date, it's gonna return the date object holding the current time. That's why I called it now. We have the regular expression. Data type was object. The object was object, and null was also an object. Okay, and that's going to be important later in the function that I wrote, and we're going to find out some more information about them. Okay, so I wrote out a pretty big function here, just so that we could see a practical usage for our switch statement. I don't know how practical it is, but at least we did something with our switch statement. So I created a function. The function is called checkType, and it takes one parameter, and inside the function is a switch statement. And what we're doing in this switch statement is we're checking the type of whatever we passed into this function. Okay, so this x or whatever was passed into this function, and then we're doing this switch statement and we're checking the type. We're checking the type of the variable that was passed in. And then we have all sorts of different cases under here. We have a case for number. If it's a number, we're just going to output it's a number. If it's a string, we're going to output that it's a string. Boolean, output a boolean, and so on. When I got to object here, because we didn't want it to just say it's an object for all those different kinds of objects we just created, I wrote some conditional statements inside of it that will give us more information about the object. So I started off with an if statement, and if whatever variable is passed in was identical to null, then we're writing out it's null. Now I want to take a moment here to give a little bit more information about all of these guys. If there's 3 equal signs, this is the identity operator in JavaScript. And that means not only whatever it is has the same value, like if something is going to be identical, it has to have the same value and also has the same data type. Okay? So for example, a number of 1 and a string of 1 will be considered equal in JavaScript, but they won't be considered identical, because even though they're both 1, they're not the same data type, so they're not identical. So we can test this out starting out with null, and we're running our function here, and let's put in our null first, and let's see what happens with this. So we're running checkType, we're passing in our null. Let's see what happens. Okay, and it says it's null. Alright, so we passed null in here. We did this switch thing. Okay, and we checked the type of null. What was returned here was object, so it went into this case. And then we checked, okay, is x identical to null? And it was, and that's why we output it's null. Now if I change this to just 2 equal signs, you're going to see that it does the same thing. It still gives us it's null. Okay, but one mistake that you don't want to make is to put 1 equal sign here. If you put 1 equal sign here, you're saying what you're doing is you're assigning you're assigning null to x, okay, and then you're making x set to null. Now remember, From the last tutorial, we saw that null evaluates to false inside these if statements. So what's happening here is we're going if false, okay? It's not going to execute this because this is false because you've set x to false, and it's not going to do any of this stuff either. And we're just going to get to this else, and we're going to output this, and we can test that. Now it says it's some kind of object. Okay. We can try passing in some other stuff here. We can try passing in. Let's start with our number. It's a number. We can put in our Boolean. It's a Boolean. We can test out some of these else ifs that I wrote. Let's put in our array. Oh, that didn't work. Why didn't that work? Okay, let's check it out. A was set to an array. A, checking the type of it. It was an object. Let's see. Let's try this again. Oh, I'm sorry. We have to fix this. We have to put this back. See if that works now. Okay, and now we have it's an array. So let's see what happened here with this array. So we passed in the array. We checked the type of it. The type of it was object. So we came down here. Okay, it wasn't null. So then it went down to these else ifs. So that's the problem we had. Was before we were setting x to null, and then this was automatically returning false. Okay. Anyways, when we put once we put this back, now it's going into this else if, and it's checking if x is an instance of array, and that was returning true, and that's why we're outputting now that it's an array. Okay. We can do a couple more. Let's do. Let's put in the U. Okay, it's undefined, and finally, okay, F. It's a function, and one interesting thing is we can pass the function itself. Oops. So check type. So now it's checking the type of itself, and itself is a function. And if we save and run this, okay, it still says it's a function. Okay, thanks for listening.